What's going on, guys? Hey, here today I'm going to be showing you how to evaluate some properties for return and also kind of evaluating a deal if you're looking for a single family. Now, this is called an MLS. It's a multi-listing service. It varies from state to state. You can see here it's set up for Newport. This is a Keller Williams realtor. Joy, she's actually really nice, and she's an expert for this area. So just having my eye on some properties in Newport. Now, one of the great things about MLS is that you can do a ton of things with it, and there's probably some really great guides in addition to this. So if you're curious about any of that, you definitely can. One of the things I like using it for are custom searches, as well as pulling comps. So we're looking in Rhode Island. We're looking in 02908. Now for property type, you can do 2 to 4 units, condominium, single family, and then you can really get specific with a lot of stuff. Saltwater view, saltwater front. I'm not quite sure what the difference between that is. And when I say comps, right, you can see what's active, which means what's actually for sale. And you can also see what's been sold. Sometimes it's best to have both of these up, personally, just to run your own comps, basically. So you could look in a familiar area based on your pricing and everything and see if something nearby sold for within your target price. The one thing about pulling comps, though, is you want to kind of stay within 3 months or so, because things can obviously change, right? 3 months ago, no one was wearing masks. So, again, I could do Providence. I don't really have to do that because the zip code is specific enough. We'll do a price maximum of $350,000. And again, we're looking for multifamily units. Okay. We're going to click apply. And now we can see what's for sale. Now we'll search by newest. And you can already see that inventory is quite low. Some of these have been on the market for quite some time now that I'm looking at these. I'm not sure with zero money down. That's an interesting thing to be advertising. But let's take a look at one of these properties right here. So we have 51 Audubon Avenue, wherever that is. It's about 1,800 square feet. I would guess it's a 2-family house, but you can check down here, right? So first thing you want to see is how many units there are here. Okay. 2 units, 1 is owner, 1 is vacant. And, again, sometimes the listings will show how much they're making. If you don't know, you're going to have to kind of pull comps going on Zillow to see what they're renting for. I'm I don't want to say I'm an expert for this area, but I definitely look at a lot of comps. If I had to guess, this first unit would be about $1,200. The second unit would be about $900, and that's assuming no work has to be done. So we can click through the photos and start saving ourselves some time. Some things with rental properties, obviously the off-street parking is huge, especially in a city like Providence. It's got a nice big garage, nice lawn. So maybe, in this area, maybe to get a little bit more than market price. The interior looks pretty clean. Okay, I wouldn't really have to do too much to this one, to make it livable for yourself. Now, I'm huge on owner-occupied properties as well. So we'll go back to results. So let's say we'll keep that one on deck. Let's take a look at another one, 2 to 4 units. This is a new listing. Let's see if they list the rents here. Okay, so now we have a pretty good example. We got 1150 and 1150 for about the same size properties here with a listing price of $249. Okay, so one of the things that I like to do as a hedge or a really safe bet is if you take the monthly rent. So in this case, it's 1150 times 2. I'm not going to pretend like I can do that. So 2,300. Basically, I don't try to buy anything unless the purchase price, the total monthly rent is 1% of purchase price, right? So at $2,300, the most I'd want to pay for this house is $230,000. So that's kind of like a way to assess really quickly whether or not it's a good deal. Now, that obviously varies from market to market, but if you are doing 1% of purchase price as the monthly rents, then you're going to be perfectly fine. And we can model that here. So let's use this one as an example. It's not rocket science here, guys. Rental property, this is the first thing I Googled. Rental property calculator. Like when I first was starting out, I used this, okay? So let's make some assumptions here. Let's say we're going to do that purchase price at $230,000. Now, if you're a first-time home buyer, you can put down 7.5%. Could also put down 20%. There's a couple things that come with those two things. Interest rates right now are a little low, so we'll do 3.5. If you are going with a 7.5, you're going to pay PMI. We have a whole discussion with a mortgage loan officer if that's something you guys are interested in. Okay, at $230,000, we are going to have some closing costs. This is going to be a lawyer. Now, you could also negotiate a closing cost credit. In my experience with a similar deal, my closing costs were about $5,000. So let's say that we negotiate that we're splitting the cost. So I only have $2,500. All right, now let's go back to the MLS because we have a ton of information here, right? Real estate taxes, $4,298 a year. So we're going to throw that into here. Total insurance. This is, again, something that might come from experience. I know that for doing this kind of house in this market, my insurance quote's going to be out for $1,200. You could go cheap on insurance, but in my opinion, just like with health insurance, you don't get health insurance for when you're healthy. You get it for when you're sick, and who could predict what happens? So if you go cheap on it and something happens and you find out you're not covered, saving what comes out to be about $10 or $20 a month, it's not really worth it. A homeowner association fee, there's none. We own the house. Now for maintenance and other costs, it's hard to predict, right? So when I think about maintaining a property, that's kind of what's going to go wrong with it. We want to have a nest egg anyway. So for this calculation, we're going to just assume that we're not going to need any maintenance going into it. And in terms of other costs, let's say prepping the home to turnover is going to be about $600. That's a rental for a dumpster, that sort of thing. Annual increase here, again, we could mess with the numbers. Like that initial cost is probably going to be a one-time, but we might see it every single year. So, again, you guys can kind of mess around with this a little bit. So we have the monthly rent. Now here's something where as owner occupied, it kind of starts becoming important, and we could use the same thing with a single family. So if you're currently paying rent, and you're going to owner occupy, sorry, that's Nordstrom Rack. If you're going to owner occupy this, for whatever unit that you're owner occupying, I would calculate your rent, right? So for me in Providence, when I was living in a sort of luxury apartment, that was $1,500 a month for a very similar size apartment. So instead of $1,150, I would honestly put in what I'm paying currently, because now that's a cost that's saved, and that kind of can help you with your personal math, right? Because instead of spending $1,500 a month, you're now putting money into a property, building equity. So that's something to keep in mind when you're making your calculations. But for this one, again, we'll do the $2,300. Okay. Annual increase, you probably don't want to raise rents too much, and you probably won't find yourself moving them, especially if you have good tenants in place. The vacancy rate, they have at 5%. Let's assume 10%. It does take about 30 or 45 days to turn things over, unless you have some really great ways of getting people in and out. It just takes quite some time. Now, the other thing in this for MLS is you can see how properties are forecasted to grow. Real estate market trends, 4.06%. So we're going to put 4.06% per year. For holding this property, we're going to go the full 30 years on it. Cost to sell, 8% is way too high. It's only going to be about 3 for the person that's buying, and then and 2 for the person that's selling for realtors. So again, you guys can go ahead and screenshot this, take a look, go back over what I just talked about, and just know that these numbers are going to look different depending on what property you're evaluating in MLS. All right, so again, we're just looking at this one on a Whipple Street. I can't get back to the front, but we remember what it looked like. All right, so we got everything in there. We got the maintenance. Again, when we look at maintenance, we just want to have a safe little nest egg, which I take outside of the calculation of a cash flow, okay? Hit calculate. Let's take a look. Did we do everything right? So at 7.5% down, we're looking at a mortgage of this with the property tax and also the insurance. So that's going to be your escrow total cost. So against all that, the property is going to cash flow $600 every single month. And that means that we're going to have a net operating income of $1,561, which is actually quite great. So if you look at the IRR in this case, massive numbers, right? Over the 30 years. And this is where you guys can really see things compounding, right? So over here, you can already see 401k, that sort of thing. If you're treating your house like an investment property, like something you would, a traditional Roth or 401k, apologies for the car backing up in the background, you can really start to see how these things kind of accumulate. So again, initially we're taking in that income. We got the mortgage, we got the expenses, we got a positive cash flow of $7,278 a year from year one. Year one, that property that you're living in for free is paying you money. And of course, in this case, we might want to take out what we assume our living costs to be, but at the very least, your mortgage is being covered and you're building equity. So again, after year 1, you've accumulated some equity, accumulated some more. So these models are really, really helpful, right? Because you can start seeing how things compound on itself. And it's really being driven, again, by the fact that you have an asset that's appreciating every year. Now, for your taxes, you can also depreciate this asset against your taxes on your income at a rate of usually about 3% a year. Because, of course, the house, just like a car, it's getting wear and tear. You're allowed to depreciate that. So now you have an appreciating asset that's paying you money that you can live in, right? Providing you shelter and income. And you're going to start accumulating equity from this. And by the time that you are done, right, we're holding it for 30 years, the whole length of the mortgage. Look at the income you're doing, over $1 million in total income. Now, that's not obviously profit, but the house is more than paid for itself at that point. And that's where we're seeing the return on your initial 7.5% investment plus the fees. So this calculator is a good tool. Now, there's a lot more, we could get very intricate. This one's quite basic, but if you're just trying to evaluate a deal and you're going in MLS and you're saying, hey, I want to figure out what's going on with this property. Is it even worth my time calling the realtor? This property's been on the market forever too. Oh my God. Yeah, this one was confused. I actually looked at this one. This one was very confusing. But again, you come in here, you get to calculate your rents, you look at the purchase price and you say, hey, is this going to be something that makes sense for me? And if the numbers don't make sense, on to the next one. You guys got a lot of people that purchase homes. I'm kind of shocked at how quickly they go through things. Same with people buying cars. I mean, this is a big investment. In some cases, you're going to have this house and a responsibility to the house longer than you are going to have a child, assuming you kick him out at age 18. Quite crazy. You got to make sure, you know what you're doing here. And again, this is a pretty interesting house, right? You got another deal that I might potentially be interested in here, because you can see it's close to Providence College. You get a little history of the price, right? So they bumped it down a little bit more here. But again, if you guys have questions, let me know in the comments, because I'm sure I'm not covering everything as perfectly as I could. But again, these two tools are some things you guys could really use for calculating your first deal. And again, on a single family, when you come down to the income, right? When we're looking at the numbers about monthly rent, when you put in monthly rent, put in what you're currently paying. Put in the money that you're literally, not quite pissing away, but the money that you're just giving away to someone else every month. Put that in. That's your income. That's what you're making. You're building equity. That's money in your pocket. It's not money to your luxury apartment. So that, you can still use this to then put it on paper and say, oh man, I'd rather be building equity in my single family home or my owner occupied multifamily than paying the promenade, $1,800 a month plus a $50 fee for a cat. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If it was helpful, let me know. T Blake signing out. Peace, guys.